If you've been scrolling through endless CNC machine listings, watching video after video of people bragging about the ultimate desktop router, and you still can't tell which one actually makes sense for your workshop, this review is here to cut through the noise. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks digging into the specs, hunting down forum threads, and watching hobbyist builds to see how the FoxAlien XE Ultra Core 4040 with the 710W trim router really performs when you put it to work on wood, acrylic, or even thin aluminum. The biggest fear for most buyers in this price range is ending up with a machine that looks great on paper but leaves you frustrated when you try to actually cut a piece of pine or engrave a logo on a metal tag. Let's see whether this bundle lives up to the hype or whether you should keep scrolling. First off, let's talk about the size of the work area. The XE Ultra Core offers a 440,440,120mm active space, which translates to roughly 7.34.7 inches. For a typical desktop setup, that's enough to handle a decent-sized plywood board, a few sheets of acrylic, or a handful of small aluminum plates without constantly swapping material. In my own shop, I've found that this footprint fits neatly on a sturdy desk beside my laser cutter, leaving just enough room for a laptop, a set of clamps, and a dust collection port. If you're planning to cut larger panels, say, a 24-piece of hardwood or a full sheet of 3mm aluminum, you'll quickly run into the size limit and will have to either move to a bigger CNC or break the job into smaller sections. So, the sweet spot for this machine is hobby projects, prototypes, and small batch production runs where you don't need a full-size gantry. The next piece that often gets overlooked is the motor configuration. FoxAlien uses closed-loop stepper motors in the 6086mm range, delivering roughly 2.6 Nm of torque. Closed-loop means the motor has an encoder that feeds back its position, reducing the chance of missed steps and providing smoother motion at higher speeds. In practice, that translates to a more reliable cut when you're running the router at 20,000 RPM right in the middle of the 10,000 to 30,000 revolutions per minute range the 710W trim router offers. For most wood carving and PCB engraving tasks, that speed bracket feels comfortable. You get clean edges without the motor stalling under load. However, if you plan to push the machine into heavy aluminium milling, you'll notice the torque start to struggle, especially on thicker material where the cutter has to bite harder. In those cases, a dedicated aluminum-grade spindle with more horsepower would be the better investment. One tangible benefit that shows up in real-world usage is the dust hood that comes with the trim router. In a typical home workshop, chips and fine dust can quickly cloud your workspace, making it hard to see the tool path and potentially ruining a delicate engraving. The hood on the FoxAlien router attaches easily to the spindle and channels dust straight into a collection bag or vacuum. I tested it by carving a detailed logo into a 5mm acrylic sheet, and the dust pocket stayed relatively clean. No need to constantly wipe the machine's rails after each pass. That said, the hood isn't airtight, so the finest particles still escape into the room. If you're especially sensitive to airborne dust or are working with materials that produce a lot of fine flour-like hardwood or MDF, you'll want a dedicated shop vac nearby. Now, let's discuss the software side. The XE Ultra Core is compatible with popular open-source CNC controllers like GRBL, and it ships with a basic controller interface that lets you load G-code files directly from a USB drive. The interface is straightforward. You jog the axes, set 0 points, and start the job with a single button press. For beginners, that simplicity is a major plus because you don't have to wrestle with complex configuration files. On the flip side, power users will find the lack of advanced motion control features such as synchronized multi-axis interpolation or built-in tool change macros a bit limiting. If you're already comfortable with Fusion 360 or SolidWorks and want to script more sophisticated routines, you'll spend time writing custom post-processors or using a third-party host like Universal G-Code Sender. The machine itself handles those commands fine, but the out-of-the-box software experience is basic. A practical weakness that shows up after the first few projects is the rigidity of the frame. The XE Ultra Core is built on an aluminum extrusion chassis, which keeps the cost down and makes assembly relatively quick. However, the extrusion isn't reinforced with any additional bracing, so when you run long cuts or higher speed passes, you can feel a slight flex in the gantry. For lighter moderate woodwork, say, cutting a 12-12-inch cherry board, this flex doesn't affect dimensional accuracy much. But if you need tight tolerances, like a 0.1 mm fit for a mechanical part, you may start seeing small deviations at the far ends of the travel. Adding external braces or a more